Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 5 of Crave Arts Presents The Future of Film, featuring intimate interviews with the best emerging filmmakers from around the world. My name is Tom Oliva, and I am co-founder and executive director of Crave Arts and the All-American High School Film Festival, dedicated to discovering, showcasing, and uniting the next generation of visual storytellers and content creators. In October of 2024, we celebrated our 12th annual festival. 12 years in, and our community is thriving, a testament to the power of believing in the arts and the emerging artists that share their stories with us. The collective spirit of our organization, our community, and all of our year-round initiatives is rooted in a shared passion. A passion to breathe life into stories, to collaborate with others who share your vision, and to create content at the highest level. Content with the ability to move viewers emotionally, to inspire with unprecedented style and craft, and to impact real change. Some quick updates from the All-American Bulletin Board as we gear up for our 13th annual festival in New York City. We're busy preparing for our 2025 festival, which takes place this October 17th to 19th, and submissions are open via Film Freeway with the final deadline on July 30th. Head over to hsfilmfest.com to get the latest news and updates about the 2025 festival. You can save on early bird tickets, book your discounted hotel rooms at the Hilton Midtown Hotel, and check out our downloadable 2025 budget guide, planning guides, and posters. It's never too early to begin planning your all-American adventure. And if you plan on attending the fest in New York City, we highly recommend competing in our film invitational competitions, the world's premier on-site student filmmaking competitions in New York City from October 15th to 17th. We offer a variety of real-world, authentic production experiences for student filmmakers and video production programs, your chance to crew up and produce a short film in just 10 weeks. Registration opens in May. For anyone looking for new gear, be sure to visit our Preferred Partners discount page under the Resources tab on our website. You can check out awesome discounts on a variety of gear and software. And teachers, if you're looking for a great way to boost your curriculum and elevate and inspire your students, check out our video production resource community and roadshow. Two terrific in-person or remote opportunities featuring lesson plans and interactive presentations based on our library of exemplary student films. More information can be found at hsfilmfest.com under our Education tab. Today's guest, Jordan Held, is an alumni from 2023 whose comedy, Ovaryacting, delighted our judges and festival attendees with its ability to seamlessly blend practical conflict with hilarious humor. Jordan wrote, directed, edited, and acted in the film. The project, initially pursued as part of her college application process, has been featured in 23 festivals across the nation, including the Austin Film Festival, where she won the Young Filmmakers competition. When comedy works, it seems easy. Like this funny little world was always there and the filmmaker just needed to hit record and capture it. Of course, anyone tortured enough to actually want to write and produce comedy knows that it is anything but easy. And Jordan's film illuminates the intense preparation and effort required to do it right. Ovaryacting, emphasis on ovary, is rooted in a sense of realism, but elevated by a keen sense of comedic beats and timing, ultimately highlighting Jordan's gift for capturing the little moments of life that are ripe with escalating, highly relatable, and charmingly awkward tension. Through Jordan's lens, the teenage experience takes center stage in all of its bumbling, honest, and surprisingly sincere splendor. The writing is so witty, the characters so relatable and likable, the peaks and valleys so palpable that it's easy to forget the work being done to make you feel. But it's all there. Deft direction, creative, purposeful cinematography, perfect pacing, and all of the flourishes required for a complete and entertaining experience. Sound design, structure, essential room to breathe, a final hint of score. There are surprises lurking around every corner of the script, one moment funnier than the next, but they wouldn't resonate nearly as much without a character we can and feel we must root for. The protagonist, Bill, feels like perfection. Fully formed, instantly likable, tragically flawed, paranoid but persevering, and a heart pumping with noble intentions. Simply put, this film's 4-minute runtime illuminates a distinct and worthy voice capable of the delicate balance required for a less is more cinematic excellence. Jordan is a natural who is willing to put in the work, and that's really good news for anyone lucky enough to watch her films. We can't wait to see what she creates next. I am honored to be joined by Jordan Held today. Hey Jordan, welcome. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, we are thrilled to have you, and we're going to get the conversation started with a little thing we call this or that. In this quick reply exercise, I'm going to provide two options, and you simply share which you prefer.
Okay.
All right, let's do it. Pizza or pasta?
Pasta.
Okay. Coffee or energy drink?
Coffee, always. I have 2 mugs on my desk.
I love it. I have one. It's actually my, if you can see.
Oh, yeah!
My Ted Lasso mug. I just got it at TJ Maxx
Of
recently.
course. I get
okay.
all mine from TJ's.
Yeah, you have to, right? I mean, you have to be a Maxinista. Jeans or sweats?
As much as I want to say jeans, I'm going to have to say sweats. Yeah.
Ditto.
Yeah.
Driving or walking?
I really like driving now because I know that I don't have to look at my phone and it's like really cathartic.
I love that. Glad to hear that you're being safe. City or country?
City. Yeah.
This is a tough one. West Coast or East Coast?
That is tough. I think I'm going to have to say West Coast, although I did spend all my Christmases growing up in New York, so that is very special to me.
Okay, good to know. Chaos or order?
At the end of the day, I think I'm going to say chaos.
I knew it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, another tough one here. Acting or directing?
I want to say directing because I think it's a mix of both.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
We have to get into that. Wide angle or close up?
I love a good wide.
Okay. Fantasy or realism?
Fantasy, 100%.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Because overreacting, kind of leans into the realism.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
Right. The mood has changed.
There's something there.
Drama or comedy?
Always comedy. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You got it. You got the gift. And finally, film school or DIY?
I think DIY because even when you're in film school, 75% of what you're doing is going to be DIY.
All right, I want to hear more about that. Okay, so
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Let's dive a bit deeper into all things Jordan Held. It's obviously wonderful to reconnect with you. Tell me where you are right now and what you're up to as far as film is concerned.
Yeah, so after Ovaryacting, I made that like my summer before senior year, right in the hectic mess of college applications. And since then, I've been at Chapman University. I'm in the directing program there. And so I'm in my apartment right now. It's weird how after graduating high school, you just automatically grow up, and it's quite strange, but I do love it. I love having my own space, especially to create. I like have my own little lights now and everything, and like I'll record in my apartment and things. It's very nice. Just little things here and there, but yeah, for the most part, for the past couple of years, it's crazy to think now I'm in my second semester of sophomore year.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Time flies. So I know that you made Overreacting as part of the college admission process. And hey, I guess it worked, right? There you are at Chapman. Why Chapman? Why did that feel like the right fit for you?
Well, I mean, out of the big four, it was the only one that like really liked me. But no, seriously, I went to Orange County School of the Arts for high school and for middle school, and our class was very close with a lot of the seniors, and a good chunk of them ended up going to Chapman. And so for me, Chapman wasn't like this. It was very demystified to me because we had some of our showcases there in the Felino, like the big theater and everything. So I've felt very familiar with the campus and with Chapman in general, and so but I didn't really like fully grasp it and like the grandeur of it almost. And so I went on a tour again, and I just, took everything in. And because I went on a tour, I think after I got my acceptance, because I just really wanted to solidify, like, okay, am I going to be making the right choice? Because I was deciding between a couple, and then afterwards I walked through like the theater and everything again, and they had the new like dorms up next to there, and I was like, okay, I think this might be it for me. Yeah.
Very cool. So freshman year out of the way, second semester, sophomore, you're settled in. It seems like a sort of a logical, nice extension of your high school experience, and it's probably quite comforting to know other people there. How would you describe your experience at college so far? Are there like distinct moments or assignments or experiences that you've had that stand out?
That's a great question. I feel like, because I still like I've always like valued my education, and like my parents were like, they were never like, I think no matter what I would do, as long as it's not like too off the wall, they would be very supportive of me, and that definitely helped. But I always valued like I mean, I'm a movie girl, so like I always fantasized about like, the classic college experience and everything. And so that was always very important to me, and I wish that I had more time for my own stuff too, because I did make I do make films here and there for like obviously for assignments and everything, but I have all these ideas and stuff just like floating inside my head, and to get them out and to actually like produce them, it's like thankfully it gives me a lot of time for pre-production to like really lock in on that and put all of my eggs in that basket. So thankfully I've been getting very good at pre-production and that's something that I love to do, but that's kind of, I feel like the idea with film school right now for me is like I'm very focused on my education in terms of like really getting to know film like on a deeper level, and also balancing my own ideas and my own creative flow outside of that.
That's awesome. And what does it look like on a day-to-day basis? Like what does a college student at Chapman do on a day-to-day basis? I mean, there's a lot of people listening to this who are making decisions that you had to make. I'd love to give them a glimpse of, the day-to-day.
Yeah, I mean, growing up, I wanted, I really wanted to be a stickler about college and everything. It was this very fantastical thing to me. I had a horrible elementary school experience. I hated elementary school. I think I was really just meant to like be born into a young adult slash teenager to young adult. So elementary school is a bit rough. So I always loved the idea of like this like mystical being of college. And so I think when I finally got here, my routine was a bit different than I expected, because it's definitely not like the classic experience. I have a heart problem, and so that's like affected filmmaking a little bit, especially with overreacting. But using that to make it was like in tandem was actually like a very cathartic experience, and I did learn a lot about like my process as a filmmaker. And so because I have like limited energy with that, like not as much as like my peers, I've learned to balance both class and my own life. And so like a typical day for me, like a typical week really, because I take just like 1 or 2 classes a day pretty much, but they're like 3-hour blocks, so
Sure.
it's my whole day pretty much. So really, and it's a bunch of different things because I'm in the directing course, and I'm interested in minoring in entertainment technology. So it's half the time I'm on the computer, like doing something with like brand new technology, and the other half it's like we're on like a sound stage, just like workshopping something. So that's pretty much what it is. And then when I can, I'll like write my own little things and get that in the oven.
Well, it's awesome to hear that you're persevering despite, obvious challenges. I would never feel watching your work or speaking with you that there's a lack of energy. So congratulations on pushing through and hiding it, for lack of a better word.
No, yeah.
Is there a specific assignment thus far in your experience at Chapman that really stands out?
Ooh.
Like a cool project that you were tasked with?
Yes, actually. And it's not what you would think. I took an audio techniques class. It was required, but I took that freshman year. And honestly, it was probably one of my favorite classes I've ever taken. And I have always loved sound, but I didn't really realize it until then. I put a lot of sound work into Ovaryacting.
Yep.
I had like my mentor help me with that project, and he was really big into sound and everything. And after like working with that, I was like, okay, wow, you don't realize how much like sound affects the visuals of something. And I'm sure like a lot of people have heard this before, but I've always been told that if you have like a beautiful like 4K IMAX, like amazing stellar video, but the audio quality is like recorded on like some $2 mic, it makes it look bad. And so that class, I decided to do like we had an option to either like do a boom on a set or to sound design a project for the juniors. And I, a lowly freshman, was like, I think I want to sound design for the juniors. So, because I can't like lift that up. I have a heart problem that would probably not work very well for me. I'm a director. But I really love, I realized how much I love sound because I went in, it was like this, it was picture locked, blah, blah, blah. And I went in and I just added everything, and it's just so satisfying. It's like a little puzzle, putting them all in and just watching back. And it helps the visuals a lot, and you don't really expect that until you see it for yourself.
I'm so glad I asked, and I absolutely love that answer. It's something that we preach. I mean, because you're spot on. The audio makes all the difference, and it does instantly impact the visual experience. And I'm glad I brought it up in the introduction because sound design is a huge part of the success of Ovaryacting, adding that tension and building that tension, which is essential to the comedy and probably not what a lot of people would expect as an essential element of the comedy. So I'm glad that you had that experience, again, overcoming adversity and falling into something that worked for you.
Thank you.
And I hope that the junior was happy with your work.
I think so. I think it turned out nicely, yeah.
Very cool. Okay, so let's take a big step back and discuss your experiences that got you to this point. When did you first start making movies and why? I was surprised that Ovaryacting, from our perspective, came out of nowhere. We didn't know any of your, we didn't see any of your other work or the process that got you to that point. But when did you first start doing this, and why did you want to start doing this?
So I feel like my journey into film was a little, it sounds very conventional, but really I don't know many people besides like, I don't know, like big dogs who've kind of gone this way. But growing up, I moved from Texas to California when I was about 7. And I was at the mall one day with my mom, and this lady comes up to my mom and she's like, your daughter is just the cutest little thing. Would she be interested in acting? And my mom was like, my daughter's getting trafficked. Like, something's going on right now. And she took her card, and I was like, Mom, that might be fun. And so the auditions were at this, it was like some acting school. And the auditions were at like this hotel that my mom had been to before in LA. So she was like, okay, wait, I'm sold. And so I did that. It was like 300 kids to like 100 kids, like 12 kids. They just kept pruning and pruning and pruning. And then I went into the playground. That's what it's called. Gary Spatz is the playground. And that's where I learned how to act.
Wow.
And I went from the beginning to varsity. And, I never was like, did anything crazy. I was on like a local commercial. I did an AFI short, which I didn't realize like how like awesome that was until like I got into film school. I was like, oh, I did an AFI short. I can't believe that. But I, being on set and like doing local stuff and everything, I really loved being in front of the camera, and I still do. I mean, it's obvious in Ovaryacting. I love to act. But, when you're a kid and you're on set for, 6 hours or whatever, and they're not using you for all that time. I mean, the amount of time for a commercial I was on that I was actually on camera was maybe like 2 or 3 out of like the 6 I was there or so. Wow. And so for the rest of that time, we had studio teachers, and so they have to, encourage you to do work and everything. It's their job. But I always had my work done way before. So, when my work was done and I had nothing to do, I would beg the teacher for, instead of letting me read a book, if I could go to Video Village and see the monitors and everything, and I would stand behind the director and just watch, and it was like, okay, this whole world just opened up. And then I just helped my acting teacher at the playground like make some of the films because, for reels and everything. And from then on, they just kind of kept giving me a little hand in things. And then that's when I was like, okay, I think I want to make the switch. And then in high school, I was in the Film and Television Conservatory at OSHA. So, yeah.
Wow. I mean, that's an amazing story that you were literally one of those people that was like plucked out of the mall.
Yeah.
Crazy. And you weren't being trafficked, which is good.
No,
Yeah.
yes, very safe.
So what would you say the difference between acting and directing is?
That is a great question. Obviously, with directing, I mean, you have to direct the performance. And I think, like, especially what I learn the most, surprisingly, from my peers with directing. I very much, like, I absolutely love hearing people's, like, opinions on my work. And I love constructive criticism and hearing people's ideas and workshopping. I absolutely live for that stuff. But I find, like, if I wouldn't take advice from someone that's like telling me something, usually it's just going to go in one ear out the other. Like, I'm that kind of gal. But when it came to directing and I was like watching my other like directing emphasis peers like doing that, I was like, okay, this is kind of magical, like seeing everyone's process. And I actually like picked up a lot because I was like, you have to have like some connection with actors in order to direct. And I'm thankful that I got that through acting itself. And I'm sure other people's journeys are different, but I really think that the difference between them, obviously, is when you're acting, you have to take the direction you're getting, and you have to instead of putting a character or a story on, you have to step into the character. And when you're directing, you're the one that's feeding that character, but the actors breathe life into it. So that's what I feel like the difference is. But you can't have one without the other. In my opinion. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So then how do you, as a director, feed your actors?
It's kind of funny. Ovaryacting was kind of, now looking back, it's like, my best friend plays the lead. So that was very simple because we've known each other for a very long time, almost a decade. And so, like, I already know how he acts. He's a fantastic actor. He was just in Doc, the show.
Wow.
Yeah, that was very fun to watch. But he is a phenomenal actor, and he's one of my best friends. So I already knew how to work with him. But with other people that I didn't know and that I had, gotten through my old acting coach, I learned that with them, it was very much like they give you all of the things in acting, or not acting school, but in like directing classes about like adverbs and goals, objectives, tactics, etc. But I didn't like know that when I was in high school. Like, I wasn't like fully aware of any of those terms. So I think then and now like that I know like really like how to direct like the right way. I notice a lot of parallels now, even though my process was probably a lot different. Really, I just kind of, for me, my process is guiding someone on how to put their own life into something. And I know for some directors, they're like kind of weird about that. But for me, I like when people bring their own experiences to something. I think it makes it more real because at the end of the day, everyone only sees what's on camera. So whatever you feel and whatever you do not on camera that like people don't see what's on your mind or on your heart. Whatever you do there, they're not going to know. So do whatever you need to do and we can get this beautiful frame at the end. Because at the end of the day, it's mise-en-scène. Everyone sees what's on camera. So
I love that. And again, you're a natural at it.
Thank
Why
you.
comedy? What is it about this genre that inspires your passion to create? You're really funny. I mean, we're talking about acting and we're talking about directing, and the thing that we're not talking about is the writing, which appears so simple, but we know it's not. Why comedy?
That's the thing that I like about comedy is that it just there's a certain okay. I think when I was really an actor, like when I was younger, I loved acting in comedy, and so like I loved like Disney acting, like that kind of cheesy, like over the top. I absolutely loved my Disney audition. I auditioned for Liv and Maddie once, and I was like, oh, I made it. I'm on top of the world right now. So I think that me like loving to act in comedies like really helped me like writing it, because when you're breaking down a script as an actor in comedy and you're kind of doing all the research on it, you end up having to figure out like the specific beats and what's funny. You have to go into the script and literally figure out and piece together, okay, like this is the rule of threes, this is the setup, blah blah blah, and everything. And so having like dissected like a billion comedy scripts as an actor, that definitely helped me write it. And so at that point, because I'd seen it so many times and I literally acted it so many times, it was kind of just like an extension of my hand, like to my pen to write it. So it was pretty much, it was something that I was very familiar with. And also because it's not formulaic, because you have to bend the rules in everything you do with comedy, but because there's almost a science to it. It's not perfect, but because there are things that work and then you bend that and mess with it, and that's what makes it funny. That's why I like it, because there's something unexpected every time. I can't do that in a dramatic script. I wish I could, and I'm learning how, but there's something about comedy that I can twist it so easily, and that's what I love about it.
It's the formula, I want to say, is obvious in Ovaryacting, right? There's very distinct beats.
Yeah.
But somehow you manage to make it natural. How do you transition from what's an obvious formula, like, okay, this first he's going to run into the friend from school, say hi to your mom for me, great line. And then the little girl sees him stuffing his backpack. There's these very distinct beats from the beginning to the end, but they seem seamless. How do you do that? Does it just happen on set? Is it part of the process when you're writing?
I realize now, I mean, when you're writing it, you have to replay it in your head like a billion times and like have to imagine the timing. And even in action lines, because I like to keep my scripts like timing right. I know some people will try to cram in as much as they can into a page, but I like to try to keep my timing like somewhat consistent for each page. And when it comes to like the specific beats in Ovaryacting, I think it genuinely comes down to timing at the end of the day, because people say this all the time, comedy is all about timing, and it really is. It fully depends on like the clickiness or how slow it is, and then how it builds up. And so I think that's, if you go back, things kind of happen like this almost simultaneously. As one thing ends, another thing comes in. Mm-hmm. As one thing slows down, another thing speeds up. And so playing with that speed but also keeping it at like a consistent timing, I think is what makes it work so well.
Well, we just love Ovaryacting, and you might be surprised to know we actually use it in our roadshow presentations.
Thank you.
I've screened the film for thousands of students all over the country, and like us, everyone loves it. Where did the inspiration for that story come from?
So, I remember I was in my dining room with my mom, and I was on the phone with my acting coach, Danielle. Her and her husband are like my favorite people. They've like been my mentors for years. She's been my acting teacher since I was like in acting. So she's been with me my whole journey. But I love like talking ideas with her because she works with actors. She knows stories, everything. So I was talking with her and my mom, and we were just coming up with ideas because I knew that I had to make a film.
Sure. And
so I was like, oh, am I just going to like make something? But it just kind of came about that it was something so wholly me. And she was just coming up with stuff like, think of like something, an emotion that everyone feels, or just something that everyone feels. And so for Ovaryacting, it's pretty much embarrassment.
Right.
And take that and use a different situation for it, or something you have to do something relatable, but something very specific, because I think that the thing about Ovaryacting that's so funny to me is that, yes, everyone has felt embarrassed to do something, and quite a bit of people have been embarrassed to like buy something for someone else. This whole thing came about with the pads, and my friend buying the pads and everything was because I think my aunt had brought up that she had to buy diapers for my grandmother. So it was like she, of course, just not want to do that in front of many people. But, people have been through that. That's something that happens in real life. But, I mean, I doubt this situation has happened to many people where a guy's, like, friends comes in. Originally, it was a whole basketball team, but obviously wasn't going to get all of that, but that would have been funny. It was going to be a whole basketball team, and then that little girl comes in and then threatens to tell the manager or whatever, and then he falls. Like, that's not going to happen in succession in tandem in real life. Maybe it has, and I just, it came to me, but that's what's so special about it, I think, is that it's such a relatable experience to feel embarrassment for something like that, but that exact situation isn't going to happen to someone. It's unexpected.
So is it a conscious process then to take the ordinary? Obviously, you make it extraordinary. And I have two teenage sons, and I can only, it's a very awkward time. And
Yes.
to go do anything out of your comfort zone or anything that puts a spotlight on you is like mortifying. And so when Bill has to go buy the pads, it's mortifying. And yet that's what makes him the hero. Is it part of your process to say, I'm going to take this ordinary thing and elevate it? And I mean that by, you're saying like he falls down or he knocks the candy dish over, and it's just one thing after another. Like, not only am I doing this, but then I run into a friend of mine and he sees me doing this. Are you conscious of taking the beats and elevating them?
Yes. So I know obviously with this, because it was for college applications, I had to have it in a specific amount of time. So I had to be under 5 minutes, and this is like right at 4.5. So for what I noticed in a lot of other student films, because I was in the film program in my high school, what I noticed about everyone else's is that it's not that they were too ambitious. I think that being ambitious is the drive for most filmmakers. I just think with like the restrictions you get on like a lot of these assignments are very hard if you want to make the stories over a long period of time or do something extremely like externally grand. And so I find a lot of joy in the internal moments and with subtext. Subtext is one of my favorite things to play with in a script. And so I just felt like that was something that I noticed with a lot of films, particularly student films. And so I absolutely loved watching ones where it's like a very specific moment in time, and I can kind of come up with the moment before, like watching it. I'm like, oh, this is what he was literally doing before this. This is probably what's going to happen after. I like things that feel like it's a scene from something larger. And that's exactly what I wanted Ovaryacting to be.
I love that. And it's essential in short films, and particularly comedy, right? This moment, capturing a moment in time and elevating it. Okay, so you sit down at the dining room table and you come up with this idea. Where do you go next? Like, tell us about your process for taking this idea and turning it into a script and then going out and filming it. It sounds like you didn't have a whole lot of experience. You had a lot of exposure.
Yeah.
And yet you were able to do what I would say is a pretty flawless production. So what were your steps in the process to make the film?
Thank you, first of all. And also, with this, after, I came up with the idea and everything, and I had this idea in my head of what I wanted it to look like, because, filmmaking is visual, so of course I had a picture. Then it's just like, I didn't really know the process perfectly, but I feel like with this, it was kind of like when you watch someone dance over and over again, and if you watch someone do that like a 1,000 times, you could probably do it yourself without having done it before, like pretty well. So I think that was the good thing about my exposure to film, is that I've seen it countless times, and so I know the process. And so there was a lot of like trial and error, but it was mostly done like in pre-production. And that's where I fell in love with pre-production. Because and I knew also that with my heart condition, that I probably wouldn't be able to record this in 12 hours on a 12-hour day. And that is definitely something that I struggle with even to this day, especially at film school, is those very long days. And I do have to be upfront about that. But when it came to this, because it was my own project, I was like, okay, well, awesome. I don't have to. And so I was like, let's find a way to do something in 6 to 8 hours. And let's work on this beforehand as much as possible, plan out times, plan out when the actors will come, so that I don't have to like have people sitting around for most of the day. So it was very much like a calculated like thing beforehand. It almost felt like a heist, like having to plan everything out, because I'm also taking in, like, I had gone to the store a couple times beforehand just to scope out the location and think of blocking and everything. And that wasn't something that I, like knew from like a class or something. I mean, it was just kind of like I just kind of did it because it made sense. But that is something you do. You go to these locations to scope out the blocking and just like the space in general. And so it is like a heist where you have to literally think of the plan of this pharmacy, and I had to think about where the actors are going to come in, who's going to come around the corner, where will they go afterwards, is there even space there? So it was very much all in the pre-production, and it started out with just writing the beats, going into writing the script, and then after I felt like I had the script locked and I'd gone through notes and everything, and I had adjusted it for different schools because some require different lengths. So there is an alternate cut of Ovaryacting out there with 2 minutes and no dialogue, and I do not remember what it looks like. But, yeah, it is a lot of just, like, I did the notes and then script, classic, and then I just dove right in.
Did you storyboard it? Did you have, pictures of the various shots and things?
I did a little bit. I did, like, some parts at the beginning, but for the most part, because I had such a strong idea in my head, and I had already talked to my DP, my cinematographer, about it, it was one of those things where, like, I'm not, like, a very cinematography person. Like, I am now, but at that time I wasn't, and my expertise was much more on performances, which I think is obvious. I absolutely love that. But
it is obvious, but I will also say it doesn't feel unbalanced in that way. I commend the cinematography in the same way that I commend the performances.
I think it turned out fantastic, and so a lot of that was just like trust in my DP. And actually we had at Chapman we have master classes, so we have we have actors and directors, writers, whomever in the industry come in for like however long and talk about, usually it's like if they have a movie, they'll play the movie, we talk about it, we ask questions, etc. And it's awesome. And one time we had Celine Song come in, and she is the director and writer for Past Lives. And I'd never seen it before, and my friend at the time, she absolutely loved that movie. And so, like, I remember, like, it was amazing. Anyways, Celine Song, because her background was in theater. And so what she had talked about was, because she had never really done this, like, visual medium, like film before, like, where it's literally, because at the end of the day, film is 2D. You're looking at this 2D image. And the depth is all just perception. It's relative. And so she didn't really know a lot about cinematography and, like, exactly, what to do with that and everything. And so she talked a lot about putting her trust in a cinematographer, and how the cinematographer spoke to her was something that I was like, okay, wait, this is kind of reminding me of Overact. Obviously, I'm not comparing Ovaryacting to Past Lives. Past Lives is awesome.
Okay, fair.
But I was like, this does remind me a lot about my process, because I don't know. At that time I knew like the basics in cinematography, but a lot of my cinematography and Ovaryacting was just asking questions like, what do you think about this, and how should we do this part? And it was also my cinematographer talking to me like, how about we try this, or how does this make you feel, or what kind of feeling do you want to convey here, etc. And how about if we try this, and do you want to move this over, how do you want it? And so I think that there's a beauty in cinematography working with your director, when, especially if one knows more than the other, there's a beauty in asking questions.
And trusting.
Yes.
It's really interesting to hear you talk through it, and I'm seeing the film as you're talking through it, and it's like, it's always about Bill, obviously,
yeah.
and he's in the frame, and then these secondary characters that support and develop his journey appear in the back of the frame, and then they become the focus for a second, but it's all about Bill's internal interpretation of them coming into his frame. And I wonder, was that all very purposeful, or was that part of the process and planning?
Yeah, I think it maybe not like fully deliberately that I knew that was going to happen, like in the end, but when it came to the secondary characters, especially he's labeled as basketball boy. That is my friend Noah. Originally, he was gonna have a team, and
Right.
the idea for him was I basically had this story mapped out for him. Is that they were like pretty tight friends, but he was this cool guy talking to this kind of nerd who's buying pads for his sister. But he's this cool guy who's a part of the basketball team, but he still has a soft spot for his friend. And so I had a story for him. I had this idea in my head. And I think when you have like the idea of a character and a story to them, not even in the script, like it doesn't have to be, but if you have that idea, their importance and their feeling on the screen comes naturally, I feel.
So the depth, you have a depth of the character that
yes.
we might never see, but does somehow come through.
Yeah, there's depth there. I have a story for each character in there, and they have intentions and goals, fears, etc. Maybe not like incredibly deep, but it's there. And even if you have just a little bit, it can elevate your film so much.
I absolutely love that. And it does. It absolutely does. So one of my favorite parts about the film is the exposition, the opening segment where he's in the car. And Bill at that point could be anyone. And where he's going to go could be anywhere. You know, his quest and his goals could be anything. I absolutely love how you pan over to the backpack on the passenger seat for just a second before we see everything unfold. How intentional was that? Because honestly, at that moment, you know, you don't know who this guy is. You know, he's nervous about something. You know, something's really building. You like him because he's vulnerable to you on the screen. And then you pan to the backpack, and the next thing we know, we have an establishing shot of the pharmacy, and it's like, oh, he's going to go rob this place, right? He's like, this is going to be that, which would have been a terrible story compared to what you shared. How intentional was the backpack and just that little glimpse to kind of tease the viewer in one direction, and then bam, something else?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to twist and to play with expectations, and I feel like there's multiple twists in this. But in the beginning, I think that I wanted to start off with a bang, so the backpack was very intentional, and actually, it was very much like a part of me, I feel like, because I just thought of like, what if I were in a situation, I would probably use the backpack strategy. I probably would bring a backpack because I wouldn't want people to see what I'm carrying. And that would look really creepy and really awful. But that's what I probably would have done. I mean, I have moments like these in real life. I spilled coffee once in high school on the floor, and it was my whole cup. And I was like, okay, well, everyone's looking at me right now, and I'm not really sure what I'm going to do. So I took off my sweatshirt, and I just soaked it all up. And I was like, well, there we go. So I was like, those little moments where, like, he just kind of tries to, like, it makes sense in the moment of, like, oh, I don't want anyone to see what I'm buying, so let me bring a black backpack that no one can see inside. I have moments like that a lot, and they're very stupid, but they happen, and that's what's funny.
Yeah, it is leaning into the sketch, right? It's
yeah,
so sketchy.
Exactly.
And everything that he's doing is so sketchy. And I love that. That's where the comedy is. Like, it would be so easy. Just go in, grab it, and take it up front and buy it, right?
Yeah.
But that's not how life happens. Life happens because you're overthinking it, and you're making it into this epic struggle. And, you know, as you approach the counter after everything, let me get a bunch of these little candies because I just don't know what else to do with my hands, and and everything builds, and that leads me to another favorite point in the film, and I don't want to go too crazy into this, but I think that the layers are what makes it so special, even though you're not really conscious of the layers the first time you're watching it. You're just enjoying it. It's just such a lighthearted but heavy, you know, this wonderful tension and contrast. But another favorite part is when he finally gets to the counter and he's talking to you, a character who clearly has her motivations and her background. You feel it even though you never say it. And he starts rambling about his parents being in Hawaii and the reason why he had to make this purchase for his little sister, which is so endearing, and he's such a hero. And he's just rambling on. He starts talking about like the moon and the sun. And how did that come to you in the writing process?
A lot of that monologue was in the script, and I had people ask me all the time if it was like ad-libbed, and Caleb is fantastic at ad-lib, and we always riff with each other, so it was actually very simple for us to like do that. So there is like a bit of actually Caleb the actor in there. He did include quite a bit of his own things, but for the most part, it's basically just a. I think what it looks like in the script is just like these sentences and then ellipses and then another sentence ellipses. So it's like it's very like just ideas, and so he took that because I wanted it to be very authentic, and Caleb is naturally awkward, and I love him for that, but I knew that he would bring that to the table, and so that was very intentional. And you know, I'm always taught that you don't need like dialogue at the end of the day. It's not as important as the visuals, but I love a good monologue, and I think that if you have wonderful subtext in every line you write, then I think I think it's worth 1,000 words.
You have a gift for that subtext.
Thank you.
It permeates throughout the film, and definitely is a huge part of why it's successful. You know, and not to belabor it, but you know, he goes on this rant about why he's there, and it's there's wonderful layers to it, and then there's this other layer that I love, and this is something that it's so hard to teach, but I always try to emphasize, you know, when I'm presenting or something, working with young writers, there's this flirtation between the two characters, but it's so delicate. You don't overdo it, but he's obviously happy to know that she approves of what he's doing. And then in that moment, well, let's just add another layer. He decides, well, I'm going to be a hero to this girl too behind the counter, and I'm going to go get her some pads too. And it's so awkward, and then leads to the final beat, which is like, oh, and that'll be $63 because he's bought all this stuff and has no idea how expensive it is. Again, just part of the script, intentional layers.
Yeah, definitely. I wanted a bit of flirtation in there. I'm a sucker for cheesy rom-coms and everything, and I wanted an element in there. This was extremely inspired. This was inspired by a lot of things. I think Ovaryacting is kind of the love child of a bunch of my favorite movies and shows. I mean, my friend was telling me after I made this, he's like a huge nerd, and he was like, this reminds me of like a certain anime I watched, and I was like, I do have inspirations from things that I've seen, like, always, and there's a cheesiness in this that I've seen in anime. There's a cheesiness that I've seen in like my favorite sitcoms, and so I think that was my favorite part about it. But there is a deliberacy in the little bit of flirtation, and I feel like it wouldn't have been the same, and his awkwardness wouldn't have shown through if that wasn't there. Because if there is a bit of attraction there somehow, whether you see it as one-sided or not, it makes it so much more awkward and so much more funny, and it raises the stakes, because if he loses this, if he messes up, not only is he embarrassing himself with the pads, he's going to lose his chance at this. So yeah, it was the only logical explanation. It was the only thing that made sense.
And it works so well. I absolutely love the film, and the fact that we can speak at length about it, about this miniature world within the larger world that you created, I think is a testament to, you know, the depth that you put into the script and your gifts as a writer.
Thank you.
And forget the acting, forget the directing, just that, and then to add all of it on top is just amazing. So I assume that since Ovaryacting, you've been working on other things, and if you haven't, get to work, girl, because you have all this voice inside of you. How has your process changed since then? How have you grown as a storyteller?
That is a very great question. I think that I'm blessed to have had such a wonderful process with Ovaryacting. Yes, I stayed up extremely late editing some days, and yes, there were tears here and there, and yes, it is a blood, sweat, and tears process. You're putting your heart into, not only was I putting my heart into something, I was putting my time into something. Mm-hmm. And that is, you know, I can get over being crushed from something if it means a lot to me. But when I put my time into it, and when I spend so much time doing something, especially that I love, you know, and it's a gamble whether, you know, it'll take off or not. I mean, I wasn't expecting it to take off. My mom just recommended I put it into festivals, really, and then I started this whole journey, and I'm so thankful for it, but you never really know. And I think that my process then even though I was kind of the new kid on the block, and I may not have known a lot of like the terms and all of that stuff, I had an idea, and I've been exposed to this stuff, and I've taken it all in. And so I think after that, I really loved my process with that, and I wouldn't change a lot, honestly. And I'm very blessed to say that. And I have made projects like in high school. I know you said that this kind of felt like it came out of nowhere, but
Yeah.
I mean, I've made things before, not only for classes, but just for fun growing up. And so there is trial and error there. And so this was me trying to hone my skills that I've gotten from that into something that I'm proud of and I want to share. And I feel like now it's the same thing. I loved my process for overreacting. I think I'm very proud of how I was able to get the ideas together. And not only, we shot this in 6 hours.
Wow.
And we spent 2 hours, setting up and cleaning up. But I mean, that's incredible that I was able to do that. And I'm very thankful for my team. But I think it's a testament to my perseverance and also to the craft. And I think now my next step is to just take everything that I loved about overreacting and about that process and to just hone in on it. And I think that right now I'm just focusing on how I can get my footing and feel more balanced as a director. Because then, I had all these ideas and I knew what I wanted to get out, but I didn't know how to verbalize it. And now I'm learning how to. And I'm very much just like a sponge right now, just trying to take stuff in. I'm writing a lot. I think that's the most thing is like, because it's a lot of effort for me to make a film. It takes more effort than the normal person for me. I with adversity and everything with my health, but I love writing, and that's the beautiful thing about it is that I don't have to worry about that. And so I'm a director first and foremost. I love being on set. I thrive on set, but you asked me a question earlier if I prefer fantasy or reality, and I think that there are a lot of fantastical elements in overreacting. It's not wholly realistic, and I love realism, but I think that you have to have an emotional realism, and with that, I think you have to put a little bit of the fantastic in there. And that's what I also love about screenwriting is that I don't have to worry about being on a set and being tired and everything. I can just play. So, yeah.
Yeah, and you did boil it down in there, and I'm hearing things in between the lines, and one of those things is that you put a lot of hard work into this. It doesn't just happen. But one of the things I really like that you're essentially saying is that you paid attention when you were around projects, and being around all of these projects naturally educated you about how to do it on your own. And I love that for our community to hear that, because we always say that, just get on every set that you can. Just be a sponge. Go and experience it. It will, in one way or the other, inform the art that you create and inform your own voice. And I think that's just really important. One question that I meant to ask about the film. How did you get the store? How did you come to get such a great location?
That's such an awesome question. So I knew I wanted a pharmacy. Obviously, it takes place in there. And I had this very distinct picture in my head of what I wanted it to look like. And so I live in Newport Beach, California. So I'm like an hour from LA, by the beach. And we have a lot of really cute pharmacies. We have some like independent, like private ones and stuff like that, little markets and things. And so my mom, bless her heart, while I was because we had I was there from like 10 to 5 at school in high school because I was in film. So, it took forever. So while I was there, she would go around and ask these pharmacies like, hey, my daughter's in film, etc. Would you be interested? And obviously, she was willing to pay them. But really, it's not going to be a crazy amount. So we had maybe $500 on the table, take it or leave it type of deal. Mm-hmm. But it honestly was just by chance. We shot this at Balboa Pharmacy on Balboa Island. I love Balboa Island. And it just so happened to be that the new owner of that was he used to be a producer, in Hollywood. And so he was like, yes, I want to help out young filmmakers. And it just ended up working out. And it just so happened to be that pharmacy was exactly what I had imagined. Mm. I don't know how, it's crazy how all of this worked out. It's still talking about it. I'm this just doesn't happen. And I think that Ovaryacting is as much as the journey it took to making it as the actual film. And so I'm very thankful for this experience because I absolutely love talking about it because it is as much the journey as it is the destination.
And it takes a village, right?
Yes.
It's all these
gosh.
little pieces that people only see the end product. But, you know, that's why I love having these conversations because we get into the nitty gritty of it and all the different things that have to go into it to make it possible. Has the owner of the pharmacy seen the film?
I think he has.
We got to send it to him.
We've definitely sent it to him. And I the manager that day, or like the worker there, we of course showed it to her because she was actually there. She had to stay and watch. They had to have a worker there because we shot after hours. It happens like later at night.
Sure.
And so we did have a worker there, and so we did show it to her, and she's still like, I go in sometimes, and like I see her, and I'm like, hi, and I love going back there, and like when I go with my friends, sometimes they're like, oh, she made this film here. I don't know if you've seen it. So that place is very special to me. Every time I'm on the island, I like to go by.
If I am ever there, I promise I will stop by. That's so cool. Beyond your heart condition, what's the hardest part of making movies for you?
Ooh, yeah, because it's really not just because I feel like when I talk about it, people are always like, oh, that must be the hardest part, is like I have a limited energy for than other people. But really the challenges come with the pre-production, and that's the fun part for me because a lot of people, if you don't do all the work that you can in the pre-production, you're going to have issues on set. And so you'd think that the logical thing would be to do all the work in pre-production, but it takes so much time and it's so hard. So no one wants to do it. And for a little bit, I didn't want to do it. But then after I did, and my mom like made me, she was like, think about how easy this will be once you actually get there. And I was like, okay. So the planning and stuff is definitely the hardest part. Because that's where a lot of your energy is going. Wherever you decide to put your energy most, I think might be the hardest part. Like in terms of like time, because I spent less time directing than I did actually
Sure.
Doing the pre-production. So that's the hardest part, but it's also the most rewarding in my opinion.
I was going to say, it sounds like my next question would be, what's your favorite part? It's also your favorite part because you now understand the value and why that is the most important part, which we preach. So thank you for reinforcing that.
Yes. And it becomes fun after a while. After you do it enough, it becomes fun.
Yeah, because you see it. You see the whole landscape before you. Speaking of this energy issue that you have you run into people who don't have patience for it?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. And it's so weird and like I used to hate talking about it because I was like, oh, like here's some sick girl, but like no, it's I think I deserve as much of a place in film as anyone else, and I believe that wholeheartedly with other people. And I see like films now, like especially nowadays, of films made by like disabled filmmakers, especially like younger ones, and that's been so awesome to see because I'm like, I have, with my heart condition, I have limited energy and a bunch of other things, but when the things that affect me most is my energy, and, like, I will get tired enough and feel pain at the end of the day if I keep going and keep pushing myself. And so seeing other filmmakers who, are also disabled, but may have other challenges on set that might not be the same as mine, that's also been very helpful. And I have faced, like, I know that there's a place for me because I see people doing it. I've seen actors and filmmakers with my condition, but there are people there, and I have faced it at college. Like, no one's going to have a perfect experience. I've been on set, and I have told people, like, hey, like, I know that I'm here required for a class, but I can't be here the whole time, and I can't do these physical tasks that you want me to do, and I will try to do as much as I can, and I hate when it comes off as laziness, and I don't want it to because I know what I'm capable of, and I know the kind of filmmaker that I am. And so that it does suck when people don't see it, because especially when you have something invisible that people can't really see. They can't see what's going on inside, but I that's the glory in communication. And as a director, you have to learn that. As a filmmaker, you have to learn that. It doesn't matter what position you're in. You have to deal with communication. And so I have definitely faced people like that. But honestly, if you just talk to them, a lot of the time, they understand. Like, if you were really just like, because I don't want to get into it most of the time. I don't want to be like, hey,
Yeah.
it's vulnerable, it's hard. But honestly, sometimes if you do, it 9 times out of 10, it turns out fine and you become friends. So that's happened to me. So I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad I asked. I appreciate the perspective. So
Thank you.
do you have specific influences? I know you've mentioned it, you've kind of hinted at it, but do you have
Yeah.
specific influences that help inform your style as a storyteller?
Definitely. My favorite movie, I have a big poster Back to the Future on my wall over there. You can't see it right now, but I do. I absolutely
Back to the
love.
Future. Saw it in the theater when I was.
Oh my gosh.
It changed my life. Everyone started skateboarding after that.
Oh yeah, no, it's incredible. That's definitely like, I'm sure you could see aspects of Marty McFly in there somewhere. But not because again, it's like fantastical. Obviously, like this situation doesn't happen, but everyone has felt what Marty has felt before, and that's what makes it so great. So definitely like Spielberg. I'm a huge Spielberg fan. I absolutely love his movies. And Greta Gerwig is a huge inspiration for me when it comes to filmmaking. Just because she also is an actor, and so like seeing that, I was like, oh, that's awesome. And Little Women is probably my favorite movie of all time, besides Back to the Future. And if it's I love Studio Ghibli as well, and I feel like, some people kind of weird about cartoons and stuff, but I think if you look at the script and you look at it from a visual perspective and a storytelling perspective, there's a lot of elements in there that I absolutely adore. A lot of it is just taking the mundane and these moments and elevating it and making it fantastical, but also emotionally realistic. And I feel like a lot of ways in filmmaking to make something feel or look realistic, you have to mess with it a little bit. And so it might not be exactly what would happen in reality, but if it feels the same way, if you feel the same way, then no one's the wiser. So
I'm so glad that you said that. I actually earlier was going to mention that, and I didn't know how to say it, but you basically just said it, that there is almost an element of animation in your style. And it's that way to, that build up, that elevation of a moment to make it more dramatic. And yet it would never work. It wouldn't be fun if it wasn't rooted in a character that was very real. And you just said it. Well, thank you for that. What's next for you?
I'm just writing and getting down ideas. I wish I had like a specific like thing I wanted to do, but I'm really into, not necessarily, I've been toying with the idea of like expanding on like the stories I've come up, because I've talked about this. I've come up with like these stories for each character and everything, and I'd love to play with that. And that's always something that's kind of been on the back burner, but I've had ideas floating around here and there, but it's really just taking everything that I've kind of written on a whim and kind of combining it into something that I like. And so at Chapman, we have like films we have to make every year, and so I have an art like advanced production coming up next year, and so I would love to get an all-female cast and crew. I don't know. I love writing about boys, so like clearly, but I have a wonderful producer who's like one of my best friends, and she was like, she's very aware of my condition and everything, and she loves my work, and so she was like, let's get an all-female crew. Let's get this together. We're gonna write it. We're gonna come up with ideas. We're gonna have an amazing time, and so it sounds like we're on a good path, but really we're just kind of in that, not even writing yet. We're just trying to get everyone together and come up with little semblances of ideas. So that's the plan right now.
Well, that's very exciting. I certainly cannot wait to see what's next. I have no doubt that it'll be highly entertaining, but with a lot of depth. I guess just one last question for you. What did it mean to, you mentioned that your mom encouraged you to enter film festivals. I'm so glad that you did. Thank you.
Thank you.
What did your recognition at All-American mean as you continued to pursue this passion?
It was, I remember that weekend so vividly because it was like that week was like a sandwich for me because one weekend I had to be in Catalina for a film festival. I love Catalina Island. And then that next weekend I had to be in New York for All American. And so that was like a very monumental week for me because I was like, okay, I have two festivals like in the same week practically, and one of them's in New York, one's on Catalina Island. Like this is it was very like humbling. I was like this is just I'm very grateful for my journey. And around that time, like when I was in All American, I was like, especially when I went to New York, I realized I was like, okay, like I feel like I'm really going somewhere with this. And it was I think at the end of the day, inspiration was the biggest thing. You know, being there, I met up with like some friends that I'd met like through festivals, and I've made so many friends through festivals, which is insane, and I'm so grateful for it because it's people that I probably wouldn't have run into until later because you end up working with a lot of the same people. A lot of people who are in the festival sphere, you end up working with the same people. Mm-hmm. So I'm very thankful to have met a lot of people from All American and being there and like taking photos and everything. And you know, Caleb had shot a show for 6 months in New York, and I had gone and visited him like years prior. And so for him to come back for something that I had done mm-hmm. was like full circle. And that was like a little emotional, honestly, because I was like, you know, it was a testament not only to our friendship, but to our work. Because he went to New York for acting. I went back for directing. And so it was like a full circle moment. And so I'm extremely grateful for All American for that moment.
Well, we're extremely grateful for you. And I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't say that I understand that maybe your energy is limited, but mm-hmm. I think you have a great energy, and I think you're making the most of what you have. Yeah. And we should all be so lucky for that. So I just want to thank you, Jordan, for an insightful glimpse into your experiences and motivations as a storyteller. I encourage all of you to check out links to Jordan's work in the description. And of course, thanks to all of you for tuning in and joining us. I remind you that this is just one of many in-depth conversations with the future of film. You can go to hsfilmfest.com for more information on the All-American High School Film Festival and our wonderful filmmakers like Jordan. Please subscribe and share across all platforms to support our important community of artists. Thank you so much, Jordan. This was a wonderful conversation.
Thank you so much, Tom. This was so much fun. I appreciate it.
All right,